right, good evening. Welcome. Please grab a seat. It's great to see a full room tonight. I'm SC. I'm the founder of Products That Count. It's really great to have you here today. Let me ask before we start, who here has been here 5 times this year or more? All right. Welcome, members that count. We love people coming back. And so for people who are members that count, come here 5 times or more in the year. We invite you to our holiday party next month. I'll tell you more about it later, for free. We give you 20% to all of our events of the year, and then you can get a really cool membership card. All right. So before I introduce, tonight's talk, I want to, thank our, awesome partner and sponsor, Yelp, who is providing the space and the food and the beer. Is Raj here? Yes, come on over. Welcome.
Hey guys, my name is Raj and I work here at Yelp. I just wanted to take this chance to welcome you all here. Happy to host Products That Count. And we've always seen bright and happy faces here, both when they come in and when they walk out. So really, really happy you guys are here. I also wanted to tell you guys that Yelp is hiring, both on the product design and engineering, aspects. So if you guys have any questions about the products here at Yelp, or if you're very curious about the career path you can take here at Yelp, come talk to me. Happy to chat. All right. Have a good, session.
Awesome. And I'll add to this. We've been hosting Products That Count here at Yelp for over 2 years, and the team that we work with is really awesome. So if you're interested in exploring careers, I really encourage you to chat with these guys. Okay, so one thing that sets Products That Count apart from a lot of other events is that every month we bring you a speaker who's a C-level, VP-level executive at an organization that helps build great products. And that's really what we're here to try and define, like what makes a great product or a product that counts. Tonight, I'm very excited to welcome Madhavan, because very often in Silicon Valley, we focus on, what it takes to acquire users, engage users, but we actually don't often talk about something that's really important, which is how do we actually make money. And that's what he's here to introduce. Now, another thing is that every time we have a talk, I ask all of our speakers, share something very unique with us that has never been shared before. And so I'm really looking forward to discovering what Madhavan has to say. He wrote a book that I started reading, which I found really interesting. It's called Monetizing Innovation, and we'll give away a few copies at the end. Madhavan, welcome.
Awesome. Thanks so much, SC, for the opportunity. Are you guys able to hear me? The mic's working. That's awesome. Because I only price technology. I don't get it. No, I'm just kidding. My journey with monetizing innovation started way back when I was in Stanford. In classic fashion, we had a team. We went and pitched to a VC. And there was this one question that the VC asked me. He looked at me and said, "How do you know you would monetize on this innovation?" I pulled up a spreadsheet with all kinds of assumptions, showed it to him proudly. He looked at it and said, "You've labeled them correctly. Those are assumptions. Right? How do you truly know that you would monetize?" And that question really haunted me, drove me in my, last years at Stanford, and also my early years at Simon Kucher and Partners, which is the firm that I decided to join after Stanford. We are the world's largest pricing strategy consulting firm. We've done more than 10,000 projects in our last 30 years for, more than 250 other Fortune 500 companies, etc. So I joined this company and this question still drove me. And the last 5 years as a partner and this year as a board member, I personally worked more than 100 companies. But I didn't come here to tell you my life story, did I? I came here to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that I have the answer to that question. The answer to that question of how do you truly know that you would monetize and not just hope that you would. And I'm going to give it to you in the next 25 minutes or so. Of course, the detailed answer is probably in the book, and I'm happy to stay back for Q&A and etc. But I'm going to attempt to get there. Before we level set on the answer, let's level set on what the true problem is, right? I mean, what are we actually trying to solve for? So as Simon Kucher and partners, we launched the world's largest pricing study every other year. In 2014, we launched this study across 1,600 companies worldwide, and there were more than in 40 countries, and there were more than 40% of people who took this study were like C-level people. And we asked them, are you in some sort of price compression? 1,600 companies, 80% of them said they are in some sort of price compression. We asked them, are you in a price war? 60% actually thought they were in a price war. 60%, that's a pretty high number. We asked them who started it. 90% said the others started it, right? Which is quite classic. But then, we said, okay, 80% on price compression. How do you get out of this price compression, right? We gave them a long list of things and said, what would you choose? And the number one way that everyone aligned on was to innovate to survive, to innovate to get back to glory days, to innovate to undo our bad situations. And then we asked them this simple question. We said, in the last 3 to 5 years, to what extent did your innovations, meet revenue or profit targets or simply worked, right? Stunningly, 72% of innovations fail to meet their revenue or profit targets or just fail completely. 72%. That's a pretty high number, right? It's not just the innovation failing, but it's the lives, the times that people have actually invested. It's the economic value. It's pretty staggering. It's not just us saying it. There are a lot of other credible sources which come close. Harvard Business Review, there was an article which said 8 in 10 startups will always fail, right? And then there is a Product Management Association which says 67% of innovations are failing every year, right? Failure has even come to be accepted as a necessity for innovation. I meet so many people here in the Valley, in San Francisco in the Valley. They say, I haven't failed yet, so I should be failing before I succeed. And I'm like, no, you don't need to fail. And it's about, really looking before you leap. Nothing wrong in trying fast and learning. All great, but you should not crash and burn, right? But sadly, 72% of innovations are failing. But I didn't come here again to just give you scare you with the big numbers. There's some good news. They only fail in 4 ways, right? If monetizing innovation, failure comes only in 4 varieties. That's awesome. Because if there was more ways that innovations could fail, we all have a day job and diagnosing what actually happened can be painful. They only fail in 4 ways. Let's look at them. The first one is what I call as feature shock. So these are products that were simply over-engineered. There's too much going on, excessive features, often unwanted. And because there are a lot of features going on, the price kind of is high. And at the end of the day, this product didn't resonate with any one particular or any particular segment, was just launching the product with too much going on. If you hear things like, let's just throw this in, our customers don't know what they want, this is cool stuff, it's got to go in the product, you're probably building a feature shock, right? There are many examples of feature shocks nowadays that we actually see, but one interesting example from a really, really successful company, Amazon, right? They released a Fire Phone. And there was plethora of features that was going on in the Fire Phone. One of the features was there were 4 cameras that can actually track your eyeball movement so that you get 3D perspective and you can avoid wearing 3D geeky glasses. Now, sounds cool, but no one needed it. No one was willing to pay for it. And on it went. The phone was launched at $199. In 4 months, it was 99 cents. And another 4 months, they wrote down the entire business, right? Too much going on. At the end of the day, it didn't really resonate with one particular person or audience, right? That's a feature shock. The next one is what I call as a minivation. So these are products that were the right product for the right market. As in, it was a perfect product market fit, right? But the entrepreneur or the innovator or the company simply did not have the courage to charge the right price. They under-monetized on it, right? Even though innovations are heralded as a success, everyone knows in the room, the silent secret is, we could have done better, right? That's really an innovation. Give you an example. A semiconductor company that came up with a game-changing, chip. This was there was no parallel, and they wanted to price this chip. They looked at the previous generations, which were at 65 cents. They said, we have something special. Let's undo Moore's law and they actually said, we'll price it at 85 cents to consumer electronic companies. For the consumer electronic companies, that was a steal. They came in like droves and bought it. But what really happened was those companies could charge $50 premium from people like you and I because of that semiconductor chip inside the electronics. 85 cents in exchange for like $50 of economic value. That is not fair. It was considered a success, but they knew they could have done more. And when they did a postmortem, they figured out, the customers were joking, saying, if you had said $5, we would have given it to you. Right? That's really a minivation. The right product for the right market, but simply didn't have the courage to charge the right price. The third one is what I call as hidden gem. So these are products that, simply go against the grain of your company or your DNA of your company. And people don't really bring out these hidden gems because they're worried about their existing products and cannibalizing, etc., and they pass on an opportunity. The classic example for this is Kodak. Does anyone know when Kodak had the technology for digital photographs? 1971, right? 1971, but it was sitting on the shelf as a hidden gem because they were worried about that traditional business. The rest is a history, right? So really understanding how to harness these hidden gems is important in terms of monetizing. And often they happen when there are inflection points, like a software company trying to do hardware, a hardware company trying to do software, offline company trying to go online, a traditional industry meets digital. Any of those kind of situations, often there are hidden gems and you have to look for it. The fourth way monetizing innovation fails, and by far my favorite, I call it the undead. These are products like in classic science fiction fashion, you should simply have never built. They come back to haunt you, right? And they come in two varieties. They're either the wrong answer to the right question, or they're an answer to a question no one cares about. Either way, you shouldn't have produced this. But companies do it on, and one of the classic ways innovations fail. And I couldn't resist putting this picture of an undead. There are two undeads in this photo. One is the zombie. I'll let you guys figure out what the other one is. It traveled a really long distance before being sold to a Chinese company. So that's a great example. The four ways that innovations actually fail. But what do successful companies actually do? And we were able to again benchmark this from our experience, from the studies that I talked about. There are two success criteria. The first one is price before product. For price comes before product in the English dictionary. For most companies, it stops right there, right? What happens is pretty classic. And I'm going to show you a video, and we are going to see what really happens, and I'm going to talk about a tale of two cars.
Start with the simple idea. Think more, drink coffee. Stop thinking, start doing. Hatch a design, kill the design. More coffee, design something totally original. Okay, not that original, this original. Now it's time to make something. Do it again, and again. That's good. Kick out the committees, call in the engineers, call in the car guys, call in the nerds. Not those nerds, those nerds. Blow off lunch, blow off dinner, blow off weekends. Sleep. Okay, that's enough sleep. More coffee. Build a prototype. Mold it, shape it, hate it, start over. Build another prototype. Mold it, shape it, love it. That's good. Kick out the committees again. Why? Because they lead to compromise, and compromise leads to this. Okay, back to it. More coffee. Give it some kick. Give it more power. More power. Never too much power. Give it 40 mpg. No, 41. Give it a smartphone app that can start the engine. Give it a huge display. Bigger. No, bigger. Good. Give it a starting price under 16 grand. Uh-oh, the finance guys. You can't do that. Kick out the finance guys. Take it to the track. Tweak, 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 tweak. Stop. Take it to the car shows. Call the critics. Call the marketing team. Win some awards. Get a celebrity endorser. No. Yes, he's perfect. I am? Yes, you are. Making a groundbreaking car. It's that easy.
So this was a commercial from Dodge Dart talking about how it's easy to make groundbreaking cars, right? Most companies actually follow an innovation process somewhat similar to the Dodge Dart, the ones that are in the 72%. What really happens? There is a thrust for innovation. You really build it, keep building products, destroy it, tweak it, build it again. The customers don't know what they want, keep building it, and it's built to perfection. Perfection as defined by engineering or maybe products, but at the end of the day, slap on a price when it's time to put it in the market. throw it out there and hope to monetize. That's really what happens, right? Pricing or monetization is really an afterthought. Like even what you saw in this ad, okay, throw on a 15,995, etc., right? This is a tale of one of the cars. A tale of another car which started with very similar kind of ambitions, right? In 1990, Porsche was driving off a financial cliff, right? If not at 200 miles per hour, pretty damn fast, right? What they really wanted was to innovate to survive. And they came up with this crazy idea. They said, let's make an SUV. An SUV for Porsche, that simply didn't make sense. What they did was fascinating. They went out to the market and really tried to determine if there is a market opportunity for an SUV before they even put a blueprint together. To their pleasant surprise, what they found out was people need an SUV from Porsche. They valued it, and more importantly, they were willing to pay for it. And what happened next was even more fascinating. Every feature that actually went into the car was market tested with customers to really see if they valued it and whether they were willing to pay for it. Things like the 6-speed manual transmission that Porsche was like really known for was out of the window. People didn't need it. It's not going to make it in the car. Things like big cup holders, which goes against the grain of most German engineers, was actually in because people needed it in SUV and they were willing to pay for it. Right? On and on it went. If you fast forward to today, Porsche, the SUV that they launched, is called Cayenne. A roaring success in the automotive industry, accounts for 50% of profits for Porsche, sells more than 100,000 units. Dodge Dart, on the other hand, in 2013 when they released, there was a slew of mistakes. It's pretty well documented. MarketWatch actually called it the second biggest flop of the year, and the first one was Apple Maps. So it was pretty much Apple Maps bad, right? And when we wrote the book, we actually said this is really, we called it. But when you fast forward to today, really, last month, they ended production and Dodge Dart is back in the history books, right? No more Dodge Dart starting from next month. The key difference between these types of innovation approaches is, one is build a product, slap on a price and hope to monetize. The other one, the Porsche way, is really price before product. Really understanding what your customers need, what they value, are they willing to pay, and designing your products around this information. Right? When we talk about price, let's level set on what that means, right? When we say price, most people think of a dollar figure. That's a price point. When we talk about price, we think of price as a measure. Like liter is a measure of volume, price is a measure of value, right? When you look at it that way, price is really an indication of whether people want your product and how badly do they actually want it, right? So that's really important to keep in mind. And when we talk to many companies here, many people say, we do all kinds of product market fit. Yeah, we do that. We talk to customers. We get this lean startup, etc., right? Great. But there's a critical difference in how this gets done, right? I was just, drinking, like, for instance, let's say coffee. If someone comes and asks me, did you like that coffee? Do you value it? I'm like, yeah, I like it. Do you like it at $20? I'm like, heck no. The whole conversation changes, right? At $20, no chance for that coffee. So if you didn't put price as part of your product market fit validation, you're often hearing what you want to hear. It is really about a product market pricing fit conversation and not just a product market fit conversation. That's the first success criteria. The second success criteria is really the companies that were successful had C-level involvement in monetizing innovation. When C-level people were involved, and we were able to statistically benchmark this, the success of innovations from a monetization perspective was 35% higher across all kinds of KPIs, which is kind of stunning, right? So in the book, for instance, every chapter we end with like a list of CEO questions, a question that CEO should ask their teams to rally around, monetizing innovation, right? Those are the two success criteria. I came to tell you that I have the answer of crossing the chasm, pun unintended, from like hoping to monetize to knowing that you will. And I have the answer. It's a 9-step integrated framework, right? Looks complex intentionally, but it's not. It's pretty simple, right? It starts with having the willingness to pay talk early and goes all the way down to maintaining your pricing integrity after you launch the product. And for today's talk, I'm going to focus on, few of these to at least give you a flavor for, what's in store. So the first one is having the willingness to pay talk early. So this is why is this important? Because if you don't do this, you can't really prioritize the products or features that you're actually building, right? Give you an example. This was an example for a company that was building a marketplace app. So think about it as a two-sided marketplace between sellers and buyers. And the CEO tasked their team to come up with a product for the buy side. They were already monetizing on the sell side, but not really on the buy side. They said, okay, let's monetize on the buy side. In classic fashion, their team went off-site for 2 days, thousands of post-it notes, heated discussions, and then they came back and presented 50 ideas to the CEO and said, we killed 50 ideas. This is what we want to prioritize and productize. The CEO asked the question that the VC asked me. How do you know that you would monetize? There was pinned up silence. They went outside the walls of their rooms. They talked to customers and prospects. And to their pleasant surprise, what they really found out was stuff that they thought was, people wouldn't really pay for it, was very high on the list. Stuff that they actually thought that people, would really pay for was low in the list. For instance, one of the features that they were super passionate about, and the feature that they said was the killer feature for their market, the number one feature was what they called as highlight connections from Facebook. So what the thesis went something like this. If I'm a buyer for a product, then I would be willing to pay for understanding that someone in my Facebook circle bought a product from the seller that I'm trying to buy something from. This is credible information and people would actually pay for this. Guess what? When they actually talked to customers like us, no one actually wanted it. People had their own mental models and rules in terms of figuring out reviews, etc. And people are like, yeah, it's a nice to have, but I would never pay for it. It was way down the list. Had they not done this kind of exercise, they would have really, put their efforts on building something with 50 features, probably built an okay product or a feature shock, and hope for the best. What they were able to do was to truly understand the relative priorities of these different things from a needs, value, and willingness to pay standpoint, and build a kick-ass product with 10 things and focus on things like, user experience and stuff like that, which really made the product come alive. So I always get asked this question, yeah, that sounds easy in theory, having the willingness to pay talk, but how do you actually do it, right? I'm going to show you really quick approaches of doing it, because that's the number one question, so I'm anticipating that, so I'm going to diffuse it. The first way to do it is to just do it, right? What I mean by that is to put a price point in your conversations. Earlier on in the process, when you're in your R&D stage or your ideation stage, going and asking someone, show them a blueprint, show them the value, show them what pains you're trying to solve, show them the, unmet needs and how your products actually fill those needs. You're basically trying to articulate what you would do after you launch the product, but before you launch the product, and then ask them, would you pay $100 for this? Put a price point in the conversation. That's what I mean by just do it. And then see what they say. If they say $100 for this, that doesn't make any sense. And then ask them the most important question, which is, why? And you will hear so many things that you probably can use to come back and prioritize what you're doing and productize and design the product around that information. If they say $100 is a steal, ask them, is it 200? What you're really trying to push and understand in that conversation is the product market pricing fit. Not just a product market fit. And that's really important. And the more earlier you do it, your customer is not in a negotiation mindset. They actually counterintuitively give you a lot more objective feedback about the product that you're building. As an entrepreneur or a product person or a marketing person, you actually don't have a choice whether you will talk to the customer. You will have a pricing conversation with them at one point in time. The only thing that is in your control is when you have it. Either you can have it before and design the products around that information and know that you would monetize, or do it after the fact and just keep hoping. Right? That's the only thing in your control. The second way to sort of do this is to ask the direct question. And I get asked this question, if you just go and ask someone, what would you pay for this? Wouldn't you just get garbage back? I'm like, yeah, if you ask that way, of course you'll get garbage back. Right? The smart way of asking is asking things like you articulate the value, everything, and then ask someone, what is an acceptable price do you think for this innovation? People love to lowball. People love negotiating with themselves. We all get that. Clock the answer and ask them, what do you think is an expensive price? And then follow that question is, what do you think is a prohibitively expensive price? It's a simple question, but really what is going on behind the scenes from our experiences, acceptable price is the price that they really love. They love the price more than the product. And this is something that they would be willing to pay regardless of any situation. And if no friction, so if you're in a growth stage, maybe you can be in an acceptable kind of pricing. Expensive tends to be around the price that they would actually pay you for the value that you deliver. Prohibitively expensive tends to be the price they will laugh you out of the room. If you do this in more of a statistical fashion, you'll start finding that, there are a huge percentage of people who suddenly find a certain price expensive. So these are called psychological thresholds. So moving from 99 to 101 is considered not really good because 40% of people will suddenly find it expensive. That's how you find whether there are psychological thresholds that people have for your product category and then build your product around such information. The third way to do it, which is by far an interesting way, is to ask indirect questions. Right? This is an example from a SaaS startup where what we did is we showed them their current baseline and products and said to their customers, if you had this lineup, what would you choose? So we are really simulating experiments with their customers. This is very akin to someone coming to a website, looking at the product and saying, what would I actually choose? And then we would change the setup and say, okay, if you had these products, what would you actually choose? Would you choose any of this or would you not choose any of this? Right? And then we would change some more options and ask the same question. It's a very simple question. What would you do? Which is what you would ask your customers when you're trying to sell your products. But what you're really trying to do is tap into the mental models and rules that people are using when they make decisions. For instance, in the previous slide, if someone had said, I would take the team product, and when you showed this, they would say, I won't choose any of this. What that really means is the incremental value that you added was not even comparable to the incremental price that you wanted to charge. Right? So you start understanding what people really value and what they actually would pay for. That's really how to have the conversation. There are more ways to actually do it, which we have written in the book, because it's a critical part of the whole experience. The second step in the framework is not building a one-size-fits-all. Segmentation is key, right? There is not a single market that we have actually seen where the needs are homogeneous. Think about the water that you're drinking, right? Put it in a fountain, it's free. Put it in a bottle, it's $2. Put gas in it, it's $2.50. Throw it in a minibar, it's $5. It's the same damn water, right? People have different needs, different values, and they're willing to pay differently. And you need to understand this. Once you understand this, you can build products to those segments based on that information, rather than building a product and then okay, what do I do with segmentation? Let's try to position this to different segments, but it's the same underlying product, right? You really need to build segmentation based on what people need, what they value, and what they're willing to pay for. Interesting example of how companies do it wrong. They base it on things like persona and demographics, right? Think about a 67-year-old male living in UK, really wealthy, 3 kids, is also in a castle, and is married, of course. Most of you thought about Prince Charles, but that also fits Ozzy Osbourne, right? And I would probably argue that Ozzy and Prince Charles have dramatically different tastes. So if you just build stuff on personas and demographics, you're going to get it wrong. So building segmentation is important, but segmentation that you can actually act differently. No point in segmenting and having the same treatment for everyone, right? In the interest of time, I'm going to go into the third step of the framework, which is important. How you charge is often way more important than how much you charge. And this is something that, a lot of people don't realize. Give you an example. Michelin, they came up with a, really innovative tire that they wanted to sell. And tires are pretty much one of the most price sensitive, kind of industries. And this tire was supposed to last 20% longer. So if they had gone and asked people, I want to charge a 20% premium, there's no way they would have gotten that particular price. What they did was really smart. This was tires that were sold to truckers to move stuff from point A to point B. They charged based on a per kilometer basis. The truckers loved it because now they knew exactly how long they travel. They could pass on that cost to the end customers. They didn't have to come up with upfront investment. It was a bit of a pay as you go. Great model. They got the 20% that they deserved. But if they hadn't focused on how to charge, they wouldn't have gotten it, right? So that's a really important aspect when you come up with products and stuff. Probably the last one or two, innovation won't speak for itself, especially for product guys. Don't think features, think benefits. What does your features actually do for your customers? This is an example from SmugMug, which is an amazing company, excellent product, right? I mean, their feature page was something like this. They just listed all the features, right? I mean, I had to cut and paste this page, but it was actually a scroll down of 4 plans. And, it was, at the end of the day, it really didn't speak to the customer. What they did was they changed it to this. They said, okay, you know what, now let's focus on the benefits, like robust personalization, sell photos online. Like what do those features actually mean to the customer? No change in products, just changing like how they communicate, double-digit increase in revenue, a great success story, right? Very important. And the last step that I would probably say, which is important, is your customers will behave irrationally, they're not just rational. Understanding that is important. Here's an example of a SaaS company that we worked with. When we walked in, the CEO said, I have a good, better, best product lineup. We asked him why. He said, that's what everyone else has, so I did it, right? And they were giving the farm away in the entry-level product. What we actually did was de-featured the entry-level product, created a decoy at a really high price, which no one would buy. But when you put a $299 next to a 99, the 99 looks like a ridiculous steal, right? Psychological effects, no changes in products, 36% improvement in ARPU, 29% increase in MRR, month over month after we did this, right? Which is quite fascinating. So there are many steps that we talk about. It's important to start with having the early willingness to pay conversation and then go all the way to like, having price integrity. I came here to tell you the answer. You can take the blue pill, forget that this conversation even existed, go back tomorrow, build products, slap on a price and hope to monetize. Or you can take the red pill, design your products around what customers need, what they value, and what they're willing to pay, and see how deep the rabbit hole goes. Thank you. Questions? Yeah, please.
Question is, so please kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. It really depends on like the question was, when you're doing these kind of pricing experiments to gain some kind of statistical validity, perhaps you're talking with like hundreds of people, and often you're in a situation where you probably want to just talk to 10 people to understand this. Where is the right balance between what you actually do? Did I get that right? Yeah. So it really depends on the situation that you're in and your customers that you're serving, right? All of the stuff that we write in the book applies to B2B and B2C kind of situations. In many B2B companies, 20 accounts probably are driving 80% of the revenue, right? I mean, they are key accounts. In those situations, if you're talking to 5 of them, 5 doesn't sound like statistically significant, but I coined a new term for it. It is statistically relevant. If you're talking to 5 out of 20, which is super important information, right? So in those kind of settings, that's just fine. In large scale settings, it's important to have the conversation and then hone in on like the, optimization. In a lot of what we are talking about, having the early willingness to pay conversation, even if you have conversations with like, 50 or 100 people, while you're like just building products, having the conversation, you would hear some amazing information about what you should really do, right? If 50 people say this idea sucks, maybe it's time to buck up and listen to this, right? I mean, so you can run God's own statistical survey. It's probably going to come back and tell you the same thing, right? Running those statistical surveys when you've perfected your product and you're going to launch it in the market and you want a precise price point, that's when those are more relevant. Yeah, okay. The question was for B2B SaaS companies, premium versus trial models. Great question, right? Premium models have been in vogue for the last several years. More often than not, we have been called nowadays to kill the freemium or to see even if freemiums make sense. 90% of companies that say they have a land and expand strategy are only landing. They're not expanding. Why? Because they gave the farm away in the freemium and there's really not much to upsell, right? But if you truly have a freemium that actually works, in some of the SaaS companies that have done this really, really well, you want to give a taste for your product, but then have some real functionality that people want to upsell at some point in time. If you don't have that and the incremental functionality is not justified, which for the price that you want to charge, which is the case with majority of the SaaS companies, it's a horrible idea, right? I mean, or taking stuff out of the freemium or de-featuring it is probably more important. And product product management, the way I think about it, and I was a product manager, so I say this in jest, you need the guts to take stuff away. Giving something to someone is super easy. To take it away, you need guts, and that's really important in freemium. In situations where there is no real network effects, you just want to give a taste for the product, but then it's not something that people will keep using. In those kind of situations, free trials are just fine, and they actually will substitute. Often people don't want to do a free trial and end up doing a freemium, which is a bad idea. If you're doing a freemium, there has to be a reason. Yeah. Yeah. So the question was, we saw several methods, which ones work best, what's your opinion, kind of thing. My opinion is that all of these methods are relevant, but they're relevant at different points in time when you're having conversations with customers, right? Let's say I come up with an idea for a mobile app, right? Running a survey, trying to get precise and cute is like no point, right? At that point, you're like validating your idea. You're going and asking people, okay, this is what I'm going to build. This is the value that will be delivered. And articulate it. And then you're having those conversations and asking the direct questions. Would you pay $50 for it? Right? Even asking that simple question. People don't ask that question, right? I mean, asking that would give you a great advantage because you're already hearing some of the stuff that you might hear after you launch the product. And the more you build prototypes, blueprints, you're still having that conversation. And the conversation will become more and more real because you have now a product that you think is there, but you have not fully productized it, you're having that conversation. So in those cases, direct questions are just fine. And even the acceptable, expensive kind of things are great. When you go down more into as like, if you think of a classic new product pricing, like a R&D stage, a pre-launch, a launch, and a post-launch kind of stage gate process, right around when you're in the launch, before the launch stage and the pre-launch, doing more statistical surveys or like the indirect methods, those are actually awesome because you can hone in on precision. And you're not talking precision earlier on, you're talking order of magnitudes and did you get it right? And that is a key thing, right? So I think these methods all apply at different points in time in a new product journey. If you already have a product that is fully built and you can, get more fancy with the methods, but at that point, you're just trying to come up with a price for what you built. That's the big difference. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. The reason I smile is I was waiting for this question, right? So the question was really, how do you have the price before product conversation when the product is something that people don't even get, right? So we describe 5 myths of innovation in chapter 3, right? These are myths such as, if you build it, they will come, right? The second myth is, if I don't even have a product, how can I articulate what I'm actually building, etc. And those are, to us, having seen hundreds of companies, just pure myths. Let me put it this way. If you can't articulate what you're building, I would question what you're building in the first place, right? So if you can articulate what you're building, and you have a product idea and vision, you're just having that conversation with the customer saying, look, you don't have this now, but if you had this, what would it actually mean for you? And then the more prototypes, more blueprints, more sketches that you actually show them, or even working models, you're really having the same conversation that you will have with a customer after you will launch the product. But the chances of actually getting information earlier on and acting on it would save you the trouble of going through the entire process, launching it, and hoping for the best. This is one of the reasons 72% of innovations keep failing on and on. Because it's what you think might work, but you're saying, okay, my customer doesn't know it, but you're at the end of the day having the same conversation with the same dumb customer who didn't know, and you're trying to sell it to them. Have that selling conversation early. That's really what we are talking about. That's the pricing conversation, right? Would they buy it? And if they would buy it, you're off to the races. We wanted to call the chapter 3, you're not Steve Jobs, but the editor thought it was too provocative, so we call it Why Good People Get It Wrong. And we kind of base it on that. And our feeling is that if you will maximize your odds of success with having the conversation, one way or the other. Yeah, that's a great question. So the question is, how do you normalize for the fact that someone actually said that they would do something, or would they pay for something, but at the end of the day, do they actually pay for it, right? So the way we kind of test for some of this when we do this for our clients is to have a bit of a multi-method approach. If you just align yourself on like one way, you truly don't know whether they would actually do it, right? So there are a couple of ways of actually doing this. One interesting way of actually doing some of this is, giving like features and functionality and asking people, if you had to build your ideal product, how would that look like? And organically try to see what people actually build. What are the value elements? And what price do you think you would pay for it? Which is one set of information. And then top down, you show them some concepts at a certain price, and then you try to show them concepts at other prices to truly understand where is the price elasticity. Things like the psychological curves show you a different kind of notion, right? When you actually do this in a multiple triangulated approach, you start finding out whether people would actually, do what they actually say. But still there will be people who won't do what they say, but that's okay. If you didn't actually do this, you wouldn't even know the other information in some way, right? What you could do is once you launch the product, you can actually see if there is a difference between behaviors that you're observing, and over a period of time correct for some of those biases, right? That is something that many companies have figured out how to actually do. But if you're in that territory, that's a high-class problem already. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So I think in those kind of cases, really for IoT and some of these, sort of new innovations, it is important to have those conversations to make sure you're not making the next undead. That is really the risk. You're not really getting into more of a feature shock situation, because it's, at the end of the day, there's a lot going on, but it's doing one thing, right? But is that one thing solving some needs that people want? Is it addressing some pains? Do people actually gain something by using that product? How much do they gain? What is an economic value? Can I actually take a portion of that? That's really the conversation you want to have in IoT. For instance, if you're saving a electricity bill, what does that actually mean? What portion of that can I actually retain? Those are the things that you want to actually test for. It's less about feature shocks, but more about avoiding the undeads or even missing out on the hidden gems. Good, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, we do price for like non-profits. We've helped companies or who are in the non-profit space price. Personally, I'm not an expert in that space. I do more for-profit businesses. But there are some. What we try to really understand is where is the difference between what people are willing to pay for versus what do you really want to do, because there is a social cost or some cost that your nonprofit actually solves for. So typically there is a trade-off between expectation and what you can actually do, and then triangulating between those. It becomes more of a get the facts and then have the philosophical debate, not having the philosophical debate without the facts, right? So but the approach is kind of similar. Perfect. Sorry, I can't hear you. Yeah, you got that perfect. Clap hands. Yeah, sorry. Oh, totally. Oh, yes. Yeah, totally. Great question. In those kind of situations, you need to have, multiple conversations with not only the person using it, but the person who has the budget and probably even the person who's signing the check. And what you would actually find is two situations. Either everyone gets the value and they understand it, or you'd actually see a disconnect in the value. The engineering guy gets the product, and when you go to someone who actually signing the check, they're like, why am I paying this again? Right? At least you'll hear some of that. So then what you really need to do is trying to understand how can you educate various people in the organization about your value statements and what you're really trying to solve for, and use that in your sales process to really get to it. Because in those conversations, you probably say, look, we talk to the engineering guys, here's where they actually derive value. And you need to be able to say that to the other person who doesn't get it. so that you can actually justify your pricing. And if you didn't have those multiple conversations, you're often stuck with just one opinion. So having those specific conversations is important. And many, we talked about like SaaS companies, etc. Many of those companies are facing the exact same challenge. As in, is it a CTO sale? Is it a CMO sale? Is it a head of business unit who's buying, or is it an engineer or product guy? But having those conversations across personas is important. And in some verticals, it gets even more interesting because it is not even within the walls of that organization. Take, for instance, like, pharmaceutical. There are like physicians, there are payers, there are like consumers, and then everyone in between. There's a whole chain of like who pays, who doesn't pay, who actually gets what, etc. So those kind of situations get even more complex. Yep. 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 So in those situations, from our experience, it's hard to actually come up with like a business case that makes sense because you actually don't know what will actually happen. But in those situations, what you can do is identify whether people will participate, and for certain hypothetical situation, what might their bids be. This is how we actually validate whether an auction model actually makes sense for other businesses. And you will start finding that either people will participate or not, depending on whether everyone else is participating. You'll see some dynamics, or people will say this is simply a horrible idea, I'd rather be charged in a simple manner, right? So having those conversations is important, and focusing on like orders of magnitude is important. You will never get precise in the business case because that's some of like how the market evolves, you can't predict it. But it's better than not having the conversation. Right. One more question? Okay, you get the last one. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so the key thing to really ask yourself is, are you charging based on the value that you deliver, or you're simply charging for what you're doing, right? I think many of you are in SaaS businesses, for instance, right? Most software companies would say, I will charge based on a per seat or a per user basis. But that is often highly uncorrelated with the value that the software actually brings to the table, right? We talk about a case study which is pretty much exactly the same as Michelin in the book. We talk about Optimizely, right? Optimizely, for those of you who don't know, is like a software product that basically enables A/B testing, and it's an A/B testing platform, right? The way they monetize is not based on a per seat or a per user basis. And this was a debate when they actually started, right? And the way they actually, Dan Siroker, the CEO, decided to price this particular product was to think about, how, align that product with how many people come to your website and are getting A/B tested, right? That is more akin to like a, charging based on a per kilometer basis. So if you have like thousands of visitors in your website, that's a very different story from if you have like 100 people in your website, right? How many people go through these tests was a measure of value, and they charged based on that, which was a dramatic success. Had they done it based on a per user or per seat, that would be under monetizing, right? So the real question is to ask yourself whether you have the right business model or pricing model, and then see how far it's aligned with value. There's a very easy way to like test whether people perceive certain models to be better than others, right? One of the techniques that we write about is we actually give people break-even situations. So for instance, a company in the financial services space, for what we did for them was, if you're selling a $100 product, is 3.5% an acceptable fee? 3.5% plus 15 cents, is it an acceptable fee? Or do you think 50 cents is an acceptable fee? Or like so on and so on. If you do the math, all of those options add up to the same. And then we ask people, are you indifferent? We have not seen a single case where people are indifferent. In those situations, they would say, I like the 3.5% plus the 15 cents. 50 cents doesn't sound good or doesn't like. So if you actually start hearing those, you see that the people perceive a model to be important. And the moment you align to that, there is more magic. Thank you.
Madhavan, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, good. So we had like 3 copies. Who are you going to give it to? Okay, you're going to give it? Perfect. Awesome. Product that counts. Super.
All right. So one thing that we do after the talk is shout outs. So I'm going to ask those of you who want to do a shout out to please come up here and line up, and please do that now. Meanwhile, I want to share with you a few things. One is we run these events the way we build products. I was in product for a dozen years before doing this, and so in your inbox you should have an email where we ask you for some feedback. It's really a net promoter score. It's very helpful for us. It's very helpful because that way we can give feedback to Madhavan. So please take just 1 minute to complete this. One thing that I'm really excited to share with you is that on Sunday we got our 15,000th member at Products That Count. So 15,000 in just like 2.5 years. Thank you. We do events. We also do podcasts and news and a bunch of other programs. So I encourage you to go to our website, www.productsthatcount, and check out all of our content. Next month, our event is our holiday party. So we'll have lots of special stuff. We'll have special prizes, a special gift, and we'll have 3 speakers instead of 1. Our first speaker is my classmate from Stanford B School, Sean Carolyn, who was a early VC in Uber, and is going to share, what he thinks is like the defining essence of a product that has the magnitude of Uber. Then I'll talk about my book, which is Mobilized, which is a book that defines or tries to define the rules behind the most successful mobile products. And so, again, like building great product and building products that count, I'll talk about that with a mobile angle. And then the third speaker is going to be someone who has created a disruptive business in water, which is, I think the product that counts the most for all of us. And so we'll have these 3 talks. We'll have extra goodies. I'll give away a bunch of my books because it's the holidays. We'll have a special gift. We'll have a few other things, and I'll be sharing that with you in our newsletter. Let's do the shout-outs.
Awesome. Thank you, Essie. Thank you, Madhavan. That was awesome. My name is Human. I just have a quick question. How many of you have heard of Credo Mobile? Great. Love to talk with you for a couple of minutes, if you don't mind. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Great. So, hi everyone. I'm Gian Giacomo. I'm the CEO and co-founder of AmicoMed, that is a digital health startup in blood pressure control. We are hiring. We are an international company. We are searching for a CTO. This is a very important product because it can impact the life of over 1 billion people, and we are very excited about that. If someone here is interested, come talk to me.
Hi, my name is John McMahon. I'm standing up here because I'm looking for my next product role. I have a UX and engineering background. Love to land in on-demand economy or travel or food tech or collaboration and productivity. So if you work in any of these spaces and you work at a company that's hiring a senior product manager, let's talk. Thanks.
Folks, sorry about this. We had a tiny little emergency situation. Everything is good. No big deal. Anyway, so We're done. The one thing I wanna tell you is there's another half hour where you can network. There's more beer, more pizza in the back. And then we close at 9:00. We want to be good citizens with Yelp. So, please be nice and, keep Yelp clean. Thank you very much.